I think and I hope you will agree with me that it has been an excellent day. We've all learned a lot and we've got a lot of inspiration. And I would like to, since this is the last time I'm speaking from the podium, I would like to thank very much Fabian Society, Andrew Harrop, Katie and the entire team for having us here, because it's thanks to their hard work that we could have experienced such an incredible conference. I think it's very humbling for all of us, being participants, getting involved. But today my role is a very honoring one. This is almost the last session, and it's only great that we can do it with a great beat, so to say. And it's my honor to introduce Pedro Silva Pereira, who is the Vice President of the European Parliament, who, as much as me, has the United Kingdom very deeply in his heart, being the part of the UK contract group in the European Parliament, as also the UK Parliamentary Partnership Assembly. He has also been a rapporteur for the trade agreements, among the others, Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. And here at Fabian Society, I already said I feel very much at home, but so does he, because he's the president of Respublica, which is the Portuguese Socialist Party think tank. He has served in diverse capacities as the state secretary, as a minister, as the member of parliament. He is a lawyer, and he is here today with us at this very late hour to underline how important solidarity, mutual understanding, respect for one another, but also ability to contribute to something that we all hope is going to be the victory of Labour is for us on the continent. Pedro Silva Pereira, Vice President of the European Parliament, it's an absolute honour and privilege to give you the floor.
Now, good evening to you all. Thank you to the organizers for the invitation, and also to Anya for her kind presentation. It is really a great pleasure for me to be here today with you after such a long and intense and productive debate. And let me start by underlining the crucial role of FAPS and the Fabian Society in building our political platform and in setting our political agenda, and on doing this together, this joint exercise of identifying the challenges and political responses we need is really important. In particular because this New Year's conference gives us the opportunity to remind to everybody that despite Brexit, we all belong to the same political family, sharing the same values and fighting the same political fight for our vision about the future, for our vision about more just societies. And this hasn't changed. In fact, about 7 years, almost 7 years after the Brexit referendum, I believe it is clear that history has shown that we need more EU-UK cooperation, not less. This is totally obvious. From the war in Ukraine, the risk of a rising nuclear threat from the part of Russia, to climate change, to China, to migration, to tax havens, to many other topics of our agenda. It is clear that we need more cooperation, and the solutions we need can only be built in terms of political cooperation. So the global agenda is now calling for more EU-UK cooperation. That is clear. It is really a nonsense from this point of view the constant bullying against the EU from the part of the conservative, radical Brexiteers. This constant confrontation leads really to nowhere. And it is a waste of energy, a waste of opportunities in our partnership for the future. I must say that after so many conservative prime ministers, I do believe that only a Labour government can restore trust and build conditions for a successful and meaningful partnership between the European Union and the UK. But we have instruments to do that. We have a trade and cooperation agreement with zero tariffs and zero quotas. It is an unprecedented trade agreement. We don't have that sort of thing with no other country in the world. And nevertheless, this constant confrontation is really, as I said, a waste of opportunities that we should address. But before that, there's a short-term concern. And we have to take this very seriously. I am the rapporteur in the European Parliament for the implementation of the withdrawal agreement. And I can only hope that this time, for a change, the ongoing talks between the EU and the UK on the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol can be successful. Because this is really a very serious matter. This is about peace in the Isle of Ireland. It is about delivering on the promise of the Good Friday Agreement for no physical border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, while ensuring the integrity of the single market. And we know that this is a difficult challenge, but an unavoidable challenge arising from Brexit. So time has come to address this issue. We need reasonable and flexible implementation of the agreed protocol so that this dilemma can be addressed, meaning no physical border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, but at the same time, the safeguard of the integrity of the single market. And I hope that this time, and I'm crossing my fingers, we can have a positive outcome there, because it is absurd that we have this confrontation, this refusal of implementing the agreed international agreement, and also a very dangerous confrontation, because we all know how sensitive this issue is in Northern Ireland. So we need to find joint solutions. For sure, I don't think that unilateral solutions or unilateral actions would lead us anywhere. So let's see if we have, for a change, a positive outcome on these discussions that are now currently going on. And then there will be a turn of page, so I hope, because only on the basis of the implementation of the withdrawal agreement, we can keep peace in Northern Ireland and restore political peace in this relationship between the EU and the European Union. I must say that today's debate was very intense and impressive, also for the content, but also for the title, the pathway to power. It sets a clear political ambition. It might even sound optimistic, but very rightly so. We know that the Labour Party is in the lead, and I can assure you that all socialists and social democrats all over Europe are impressed and excited by the performance of the Labour Party and its leadership. And we do hope that a victory can be achieved. We see that Labour is in the lead, but more importantly, we see that Labour deserves to be in the lead, and that will, I believe, make the difference when we come to the next elections here in the UK. All this, of course, great news for the UK, great news for democracy, and great news for our political family. And by the way, let me tell you that victory is also the goal of the socialists and social democrats in Europe. Now, I have to be very prudent here, because the last time the socialists won the European elections was back in 1994, almost 30 years ago. But nevertheless, we are the second largest family in Europe. We have about 20.6% of the seats in the European Parliament, only 4.5% behind the center-right. And we are currently in the lead in several European countries. So it is difficult, but it can be done if we do the right things, if we present a political project that can respond to the citizens' expectations. And let me conclude by making 5 brief remarks on the pathway to power, on the left's agenda that we've been discussing today. First, after today's discussion, I believe we can all agree that we still have in front of us a long and winding road. So people have talked about no complacency, so a long and winding road for sure. As a responsible political family, we know that this is not only about finding a successful strategy to celebrate a victory in the night of the next elections, something we want to do, of course, but it is also about being able to deliver and being able to answer the question, what do we want the power for? And this is the task that we have before us and that you have here in the Labour Party. And the challenge, in fact, is to meet citizens' expectations and deliver on a better and more just society. Our agenda, however, to be serious, cannot be made of simple answers to complex questions. This is a populist approach. Of course, we have to have the right messaging. I took note of this reference in the debate earlier on. We have to have the right messaging, but we have to be serious in offering workable solutions and not mere radical illusions. Second remark, as always, the starting point in our political family to build a political agenda is the understanding of the social question. That was always the starting point of our political projects. What is the modern social question in this 21st century after 3 major crises, the financial crisis, the pandemic, and now the war in Ukraine with the energy crisis and the living cost crisis and so on? Well, I believe that we have to be aware that people are very much afraid and they feel themselves insecure about the future, starting to believe even that perhaps this might be just the beginning of a downgrade, a structural downgrade on their conditions of living, on their standards. And from fear to fury is only one step away. So in particular, if we take into account the shocking rise in inequalities, the World Bank has said very recently that we are witnessing an unprecedented rise in inequalities since the Second World War. So some say these are good news for populism, and I can agree with that. But I also have to recall that fighting inequalities was always a centerpiece of our political agenda. And I believe that this has to be, again, in the center stage of our political proposal. Third remark, to win the battle for our left agenda, we have first to win the battle on our progressive values. Because behind the political debate, there's a struggle going on, there's a battle going on between selfishness and solidarity. And if selfishness wins, then populism and neoliberalism probably can win again. But if solidarity can win, then there's a chance for our pathway to power to become possible and viable. Fourth remark, a progressive agenda cannot be a mere defensive stance. Yes, of course, we have to defend the welfare state, we have to defend the public services, we have to defend labor rights, we have to defend the environment. But a progressive agenda is fundamentally about movement, about improvement, about reforms, about modernization, about offering to citizens a vision about a better future. And finally, beyond our very detailed and responsible agenda, we must never forget that in the end, normally voters try to understand who holds the flag of hope. So please, make sure that the Labour Party continues holding the flag of hope. And the best advice that I can give you, if any, is that while you have this long and winding road in front of you, but please be sure that no matter what you do, don't forget to wear your seatbelt. Thank you.
Pedro, we haven't put this to you. We'd like to ask you some questions while we wait for Mark. So could I have a question, 2 or 3 questions for Pedro on that presentation on both how Labour wins, and thank you for your solidarity, but also you made in the first half of your remarks some very important points about the relationship between the UK and the EU. So Pedro, would you like to join us back on stage for 2 minutes, and then we'll take some questions. Can I take a question for Pedro? Yes, gentleman here.
Thank you. The next election, when to happen, it will happen when the government makes up its mind. if it to be next year or thereabout, whereby it's quite clear we will be in government. If you are not in government, and I don't know how soon CTA and TCA, Trade Cooperation Agreement, I don't know when the contract will be renewed. If it were to be renewed when this lot are still in government, is there any danger that they might mess it up for us?
And can I have another question? And then, yeah, there. And a third question?
Can everyone hear? Yeah. We hear discussed a certain amount at this conference about what a UK Labour government should seek to obtain from the EU. Looking at it from the other side of the Channel or the other side of the Irish Sea, what do you think the EU would like to obtain from the UK in such negotiations?
Great question. And then we'll leave it there because we have got Mark online. So we'll have just those two questions. Pedro, would you like to respond? Thank you.
So two questions, if I understood correctly. One on the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, and the other one on the negotiations on the Northern Ireland Protocol. First, on the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. This is a very recent agreement. We don't have in the agenda a renegotiation of the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. What we have to ensure is the proper implementation, and we have to explore the full potential of this agreement. And for the economic proposal of the Labour Party, it is important to understand. Of course, there are other things the UK can do. You can have trade agreements with other countries. You can try to develop other kinds of partnership, but nothing can replace, from the economic point of view, the value of the economic relationship with the largest neighbor, which is the European Union. There's no such thing. The idea that an agreement with Australia can somehow replace the economic meaning of the relationship between the UK and the EU is nonsense. That's why I think that, despite the fact that the Trade and Cooperation Agreement could have been better, the cooperation in this agreement does not include defense and foreign policy, because the Conservative government wanted to let that aside. But nevertheless, from the economic point of view, it has a huge potential, because we are saying that despite the fact that we have the UK out of the customs union, out of the single market, with potential regulatory divergence, we have an agreement that settles the trade relationships with zero tariffs and zero quotas. And this has a huge potential. So I believe that to prolong this absurd confrontation with the EU, it's not on the best interest of the British economy, and it is for sure not in the best interests of the common challenges that we face in the global agenda. Now, on the negotiations of the Northern Ireland Protocol, what the EU wants from the UK, it's not that complicated. It is probably difficult to organize, but the goal is simple. Since we have to achieve these two conflicting desires, not to have a physical border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and safeguarding the integrity of the EU single market, what we have to ensure is a solution where goods entering in Northern Ireland that are at risk of entering in the EU, and only those are subject to the relevant border controls. Because if we don't do that between the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, you have to do it somewhere else. Now, the European Commission has shown, from our perspective, flexibility, proposing solutions to reduce red tape, to reduce the border controls to a minimum, and I do hope that you can find a way of doing this in a manner that it is consistent with the goals that we share. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pedro.